One of the things she always used to say is, we don't act with our hands, we don't act with our faces, and I'm going, well, how else do you act? I mean, I've been Mexican most of my life. It's half Italian. It's hands and gestures and whoo, and you had to take all that away. And that was like a boot camp.
Sitting next to me is a man who I like to call the comedy godfather of the Latino community. He is an actor, a writer, director, comedian, and producer. And one of my dearest friends. I am so ecstatic to introduce to you Mr. Danny Mora. Daddy!
Yo, Lydia!
Hello, Daddy. Hello, Daddy.
You know how much I love you.
I love you too, Daddy.
And half of what you said might be true.
It's all true.
But I'm mostly unemployed right now, so.
Well,
thanks for reminding me.
Not often. You're not
I'm between gigs.
unemployed.
Come on, I'll tell you why.
Often. So, what I want to start off with is, how did you end up in show business?
Oh, easy. My mom, Gabby. You met Gabby.
Of course.
They call her Gabby because she's Gabby, and I'm the son of Gabby. And if you've spent 5 minutes with me, you know why they call her Gabby and why I'm the son of Gabby. But she was afraid of the, quote, gang activity in our neighborhood. My mother's a single parent, raised me, and she's my rock. She's my idol. I went to my mother's high school graduation 12 years after I graduated from the same high school.
Wow.
But when I was a little kid, actually junior high, there was a lot of nasty things going on in the hood. And my mother, because I was just a bundle of energy, what do they call it? Hyperactive?
Yes.
They have technical words for it now.
ADD.
That's it. They didn't have it then. They also didn't have dyslexia. So my mother's family said, you know what, Gabby, your son's retarded. You can't say that out loud without getting a lawsuit these days. So she stuck me in a recreational school program after school where I was drawing and painting, making clay things, and they were putting together a little theater company. And she said, Mijo, you talk a lot. Maybe you should do this thing, see how you like it. I go, well, whatever. I auditioned, didn't know what an audition was. I booked it, didn't know what booking was. It was an equity project, didn't know what equity was. But there I was, 12 years old, maybe 12 or 13. I looked 10, and I was starring in Toby Tyler or 10 Weeks in a Circus. I worked with a live monkey, Mr. Stubbs. But when I was center stage, and they were all looking at me, I liked it. And then they would laugh.
It got you.
It was mainlining it right there. And the gentleman who was running the program, Nick Lickwar, created a theater world in Northern California, and he's in the Hall of Fame of theater up north. And he was the first mentor I had in this entertainment arena. Mm-hmm. And what I came to learn over a period of time, from project to project, from year after year, from challenge after challenge, was how blessed I was with mentors. And that's what got me on the path that I'm on now.
So what brought you to Los Angeles?
Chevy van that I bought from the dry cleaners that I was working at. My father's fifth wife, and he had a few. And I was coming to town because I had taken a break. I thought I was in love and ended up chasing a young lady up to Toronto. And when I flew into LA, I took the airport limousine, and it stopped at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel.
Oh my goodness.
And I took a walk up to Cherokee Avenue, a couple blocks away, Street Avenue, and discovered the Don Martin School of Broadcasting, where I learned to speak around full tones just like an Anglo. And I walked in there, and they met me and gave me some paperwork. We asked me a few questions. I said, well, I'm going to come back in a few months. I'll stop by. And the months turned into weeks because the girlfriend that I thought was my girlfriend was really, how can I say politely, a drug addict. and love other things, chemicals, more than me. So heartbroken, I came back, went to the school. I walked in the door and said, "Hey, Danny, how's it going?" You remember me? "Yeah." "Are you ready to jump in?" I go, "Why, I don't know. What do I got to do?" "Nothing. We found you an apartment. We got you a job. You want a steak?" And they sent me to Johnny's Steakhouse in Hollywood with a voucher. I had a steak. And a couple of weeks later, I had a roommate and a job, but I didn't have a ride. So I went back home, got the van, brought it to Hollywood, and spent half the time in this flea bag where I was staying, and half the time in my van.
Guess what? I've got this fabulous little bundle just for you because you are a fabulous actor. I got it for you. So what do I got for you? Let me tell you what I got for you. I got the PR cheat sheet, which every actor needs. You need to know how to do your own PR until you get that job where you can pay for a PR person. Then I have the 12-step audition. That's another cheat sheet. You know, sometimes you get freaked out at auditions and you don't know what to do. Well, my 12-step audition cheat sheet will help you and guarantee that you will slam your audition every time. And the third thing I got for you is the casting sites. I have a list of casting sites so you can go and just submit yourself for that next big part. How does that sound? It sounds good, doesn't it? Wow. And how did you get into comedy?
Well, I had a real girlfriend.
After that girlfriend.
After my introduction to the chemical world. And because having gone to the Don Martin School of Broadcasting, and everybody said at the school, "You're never going to work in this town. It's a union town. You're going to go to Broken Bone, Wyoming, start the transmitter, get paid $50 a week." And I don't know. My brain, I can't think in chronological terms. I can start the alphabet A, B, C, somewhere around G or H. I flip around, I'm at Z. So my brain has always been on a reciprocal path. It starts at the end and comes back. So if you tell me, whatever you do, don't go to the back door.
You're going to that back
I'm
door.
going to the back door. So I went to the school. It's an amazing, absolutely amazing experience. And I had part-time jobs at TV stations and radio stations, KTTV, Metro Media, I was a mailroom boy, KCOP, Crosby.
All local stations.
All local stations, Channel 13. When there were only like 3 networks back in the day, back in the 1850, I think it was. So I went there and I got a job at Cap Cities, KPOL, AM and FM on Wilton and
Which
Sunset.
at that time, Cap Cities owned ABC?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. They owned a lot. Metro Media and Cap, they had big holdings. Now it's a little different. Through the technology, we've got different ways of making money and monetizing things and stuff. But in those days, it was strictly 1 hour at a time.
Right.
And I was the mailroom guy there, and he knew I'd gone to broadcasting school. The program director.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Robertson C. Scott, another mentor. And one day, in the middle of nowhere, because they sent me to the Peace and Freedom Party to cover the elections. They sent me all these little quirky things that no real journalist would want to go to, because they knew I'd just love it. And one day he said, "How would you like to do the 6 o'clock news on Saturday?" Huh? But that's a big deal. So I worked on it all day long. I was writing. I did cassettes. Those days they were the 8-track.
Mm-hmm.
Interviews, stuff. I got off Radio News West, AP, and I got on the air and put 3 decimal points in the Dow Jones average. People were calling up, "What are you talking about? I'm losing money." So Monday after that Saturday, "You got a minute?" Went to the office, and he said, "Listen, when someone calls you into pinch hit, don't swing for the fences." Okay. Got it? And that started me on the radio path. At the station was a woman who was 13 years my senior, doing what we call traffic. That's just the designated times that commercials run.
Right.
She was the traffic supervisor, continuity and stuff. She put together the program. So when I was in the booth, she'd come in and I go, "Oh, who's that?" and we developed a friendship. Before you know it, we left the station and took her 2 kids out of school. She sold her place. I did summer relief for all the other jocks. I raised a lot of money because I was making a lot of money. I mean, gas was 29 cents a gallon. You know, bread was 23 cents a loaf. I was paying $64.50 a month for rent. Had this great relationship with her. We traveled all across the country. On the way back, got to New York, and people were saying, Freddie Prinze. Who's Freddie Prinze? And he was just hitting the scene. She picked up the LA Times. Comedy Store in Hollywood. She said, hey, like my mom, you talk a lot. What do you think? I went to the Comedy Store, not wanting to be on the amateur night thing, and I met a comic named Dap. Not Dap Sugar Willie, but Dap. Just plain old Dap. And we would go back and forth between the Imperial Gardens
On Sunset.
and what do you call it? The Hyatt.
Yes.
There was a little room there that
Yes.
they were trying to do
Next
some
to
stuff.
the Comedy Store.
Skippy Lowe was doing comedy there eventually. And he signed me up. I said, what? I got on stage, just scared out of my mind. I had no idea what I was doing. And ended up doing an encore. The MC liked me and let me go. The audience loved me. And the exact moment that I became a comic was when I was telling a story about the neighborhood that I lived in. You know, it wasn't just Latino. There were a lot of African American cats, a lot of Filipinos. You know, there was Spicks, Spades, Flips. And as I got to the word Flips, you know, Filipinos, there was a siren that I could hear coming out through the window from the original room stage. And I saw it. It was an EMT. It was, you know, a paramedic. And I just said, you know, Spicks, Spades, Flips, Pigs. They weren't cops, but the audience loved it, went nuts. And I ended up doing a lot of time for a first timer. And Mitzi Shore, the owner and guru of comedy, said, they liked you. I want you to come back next week. Only this time, have some material. So on Lorraine's doing, the woman I met with at the radio station, I got to the Comedy Store. The mentor in this was Robertson C. Scott from the radio station. So I defied the odds. My first job ever was an after a union job, and I've never looked back.
So now you're at the Comedy Store. When did you get Chico and the Man?
Okay.
And how did that happen?
Well, I told you, when I got off the plane, I heard the words Freddie Prinze. Then I got to see him get panel on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He got panel because Sammy Davis Jr. turned to Johnny, oh, come on, get the kid over here. And if you were a devotee of the Carson show, the Tonight Show, you knew that only a handful of people
were asked to
come over, comics on their first time. Matter of fact, there were 15 since Jack Parr, Steve Allen, and Johnny Carson. And I say that because one of my clients was the last guy to ever get panel, John Henton. So
actor from
Living Single. Yeah, and I'll tell you that story later. But so I'm at the Comedy Store, and I see Freddie Prinze, the real Freddie Prinze. Mm-hmm. And he was dating Lenny Bruce's daughter.
Right.
And then they did a movie of the week about his life called I Can't Hear the Laughter. Mm-hmm. And I was up for the lead role in that. And so Breakdown came out, and I got to read for Chico and the Man.
Oh, wow.
He was the star, and that was a show that everybody said, you know, you could have done that. I go, well, I didn't know that. And I read with Jack Albertson. It was like late, it was like 6:45. They're in the rehearsal hall. Byron Allen's mother, Carolyn Folks, was the publicist at NBC at the time. So during that time when Chico and the Man was being produced, they were like the #1 show on television. So I got to meet all these people, you know, as a residual of that. But Jack came out of rehearsal hall, and I could see Scatman Crothers. I could see all these stars. They shut the door. Didn't have a lot of, all right, come here. Are you ready? I go, yeah. And we did this little reading. He goes, that's great. You're hired. What? So Jack Albertson hired me to play a character named Salvador. I got to Chico and the Man. It was, again, you know, being blessed to have these opportunities. And when I got there, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But I was on a huge NBC hit. And while I'd been doing most of my time at the Comedy Store, by the way, the first time I got up at the Comedy Store, I followed Paul Mooney and died a miserable death because he destroyed the audience. And I died for months and months and months. But I met an actor, Alan Rations. They were doing a little shoot. I did the shoot. So as a result of that, I ended up getting to an acting workshop run by Peggy Fury. And because she liked me, I ended up getting in tuition free. They had no scholarships. Another mentor. So it all happened so quickly. I came to town, went to broadcasting school, got a job, got in the union, went to the Comedy Store, went to AFI, did a project. Now I'm at NBC. I mean, it was just whirlwind. But every step of the way, there was somebody there to guide me.
So, you took class with Peggy Fury.
Oh, God, did I.
How long were you there?
Over a period of like a year and a half. I don't even know what the program was because they shoved me in there. The guy who was responsible for tuition would chase me down, and then he'd say, well, I'm going to talk to Peggy. And then Peggy never said anything. And I knew there weren't any scholarships.
Right.
But I got to Peggy through the Comedy Store. When I met Alan Rations, who was regular on LA Law for a long time,
Right.
I met a woman named Susan, it'll come to me. She had done a small piece. She was an editor and a director, and she'd done a piece that was up for an Academy Award, like Hearts and Minds, Hearts and Flowers, like it's about Vietnam. And we did this piece together, and I met these other actors, and they said to me, where are you studying? I said, well, I'm out of school. And they go, no, we mean acting. I go, wow, am I that bad? They go, no, you're good. And I realized years later, those are words I cannot use anymore to discuss art. There's no such thing as good or bad. There are things that work, and everything works at a certain level. That's what I try to teach. Because good and bad are evaluations, like behavior of a pup.
That's good.
That's good. So these people introduced me to Peggy. And then Peggy embraced me. And what was unique about Peggy was that she suffered from narcolepsy. So while we were doing scene study classes, we'd have 5 scenes on scene night, and each scene would run, 5, 6, 7 minutes. Well, she would sit up knitting or reading or drawing because
So
in
she
order
could stay up.
to keep her both those hemispheres of the brain active, she had to be busy. So you'd be doing your little work and you'd go, she's not watching, she's not watching, and she was really brilliant in the way she approached everything because you were not just cast in a lead role, even in a scene. First time I was on stage, I can't even remember what the scene was, but there's a piano and a couple of the actors, and I'm standing next to the piano. Well, she'd wait till like all 5 scenes would be done, and then go back and do notes from the first scene, and not miss a second. And then we're going, holy moly, this woman's insane. She's brilliant. And one of the favorite notes that she used to tell us all the time, and I used it in my workshops, stop acting. I can see you acting. I want you to work from your center. And we're going, yeah, what's my center? Where's my center? Is it my center here? Is it a gut level thing? Is it my center here? Is it in my heart? Is my center here? Is it in my soul, my brain? The one thing great about Peggy...
So what did she define the center as?
The great thing about Peggy was she never had answers. She only had questions. You had to define your own answers. So one day we were doing a scene and she goes, Mr. Mora, what were you doing? Sorry? What were you doing? I said, nothing. I was just standing next to the piano. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't working. And I'm thinking, I'm just standing here next to the piano. You weren't working. When you're on stage, when you're in front of a camera, when you're in front of a group, you must be working. Okay. I learned so much from her to this day. We started this before. To this day, I can hear her in my head. And it took me years and years to try to understand what she was saying. Almost every mentor I've had has said things that are befuddling to me, and then I kind of sort them out. Because I start at the back end and work towards the front. But one of the things she always used to say is, we don't act with our hands, we don't act with our faces, you know, and I'm going, well, how else do you act? I mean, I've been Mexican most of my life. You know, it's half Italian. You know, it's hands and gestures and whoo. And you had to take all that away. And that was like a boot camp, you know. We had scene study. We had, sense memory. Her husband, William Traylor, would do the scene study classes. And those were just painful. We'd sit for hours. Working on the sun. Can you feel the sun? No. Pretend you do. Okay. Is she watching? No, she's writing. Okay, good. I mean, it was just bizarre. But it was a whole new world of vocabulary, a whole new world of challenge.
What are some of the tools that Peggy gave you that you use today to coach students?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying tools, because a lot of the actors, comics, writers that I work with, they want to rely upon their skills, their strengths. But you have a toolbox as an actor or a writer or a comic, and there are certain tools you need for certain tasks. And one of the things that Peggy used to remind us of all the time, implore us, stop acting. I can see you acting. And we were confused by that at first. You know, no indication. I'm happy. I'm sad. You know, you could be like a stone and just be happy as a lark in the spring, just feeling it, knowing it, without indicating it. So, no indication, stop acting. And then the part that was really interesting, because I learned this as a groundling in improv, and as a comic, and working with writers, stop being safe. Learn to take a risk. If you don't take a chance, what's the journey?
What does that look like?
Well, for example, if you're a writer and you're writing a scene, the end of a scene, you get to the end of a scene, there's no more dialogue here from your principal actor, and you need to be funny, and the story's about fish. Maybe here's a good place to put in something funny that advances the story. That's not really part of your structure. If you're an actor and you go to an audition, and everybody in the room, 16 people who look exactly like you, some of them have better resumes than you do, it's not about skill, it's not about talent, you know. It's about opportunity, it's about your work. So I teach my actors, this is not a job interview. You're not looking for work. You've got 2 or 3 decision makers. You could not book this time with them. It's about your work. Mm-hmm. So preparation, preparation, preparation. Your best work possible. And then you get to the end of a scene. What's going to separate you from the other 16 actors in the room? Maybe at the very end, you put a little button on the scene. Hopefully, from the material that the writers actually created, there's a moment where they're talking about a goldfish. And at the very end of the scene, you go, well, at least I'm not the goldfish. And you cause the people in the room to laugh, where there's no laugh on the paper. Now, some actors try to reinterpret a script. Some actors try, and it's not a bad technique, to make it their own. Well, there's directions and there's writing and there's grammar. If it's 3 sentences of 1 word each, that's what the writer meant. Not commas in between there. So one of those tools was grammar. Understanding what the writer's intention was. Sometimes coaches will say, forget about the directions, you know. Well, that's great in a class. But if you're going to go read for the writer-producer of the show, you have to really
follow directions.
So, and then you have to learn to recognize what works and doesn't work. So as a result of that, those intense opportunities that Peggy brought to our attention, I created something in my own workshop, because it's like if you could not be late, Peggy's studio. They locked the door. There's no, sorry I was late, I couldn't find a parking space. There was no late. Mm-hmm. So there's a wonderful workshop story about a guy, an actor who comes in late and is crying and talking about the death of his mother, and he went to the airport to identify the body, and the body falls out, and it's just horrible. I could tell the story in 20 minutes or in 2, and the leader of the workshop says, Fine, use it. And that's one thing that Peggy was great at, you know. You come out having a bad day, you come out having a good day. You're going to an audition, you're going to go to work. That's real life. Incorporate those feelings. Don't mask them. Stop acting.
So you were in class with Peggy. You were at the Comedy Store. When did you start doing workshops at the Comedy Store?
Part of my job at the Comedy Store was to be a gatekeeper. I'd arrive at the store at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. People would start lining up. You have no idea. It was like overnight. It'd go from 10, 15 people to 150 people waiting to get in. So I stood on top of the planter in front of the steps to the Comedy Store, and I give a speech about, you know, this is not an audition. This is a chance for you to get on stage and do a few minutes of material. No one's going to watch you. No one's going to offer you a job. Please, if you're an impressionist, let me know before I sign you up. It's not fair to the room that we hear Ed Sullivan 3 times in a row. And don't do Richard Pryor's material and tell me it's your material or you're doing an impression of Richard. It's Richard's material. So I give this speech, which was written about in Playboy magazine, because I wore a military jacket and beret. They labeled me the DI of comedy in Playboy magazine. I never looked at the pictures, I just read some of the articles, but I heard about that. But I would stand out there, and these people would ask me questions. Well, how did I do? I go, well, you didn't do well. I mean, how did you feel like? Well, it was really scared. Well, that's what we saw. We saw a scared guy, or a scared woman, or a scared fish. I saw some weird stuff on amateur night. And God bless Mitzi, she actually patented the phrase, or copyrighted the phrase, or owned the phrase potluck night, and refused to call it open mic or amateur night. But running the room for her, you know, she said, well, if you see somebody you like, tell me. Eventually that led to the Westwood Comedy Store, where I saw a guy from San Francisco named Robin Williams. Did not rip the room apart. Nobody said, oh my gosh, he's a comedy genius. I just asked him if he could come back. He came up with Gilchrist, and a Filipino comic, and then a guy who's a legend in social work for young people, another comic. I can't remember all the names for a second. But he could not come back. So I gave him my home number. I thought he was from Australia. He called me Mr. Mora. Mr. Mora, do you remember me? I go, yes, Robin. It's Danny Mora, not Mr. Mora. So he came back. Mitzi saw him upon my request, because that was my job, to see if there's anybody you'd like. I got to see a lot of first-timers because I was there early, in the early 70s. And so when she saw him, she literally said, gee, he's kind of cute. Tell him to call Monday for times. She didn't say he was a great comic. Gee, he's kind of cute. As you know, he got better than cute. He got through the stars, to the stratosphere. So people asking me questions, not have time to answer them. Robert Aguayo, my partner in crime, the prettiest Mexican in show business, that was his handle. He was a stand-up, had a musical background, and good-looking dude. So he thought, with all due respect to Vicky Carr, please welcome the prettiest Mexican in show business, which was funny. Vicky Carr was a huge star in music. But the MCs would get this guy's Mexican and he thinks he's good looking. Boom. Well, I had gotten in trouble. My first ever network showcase, I had a fight with a member of the audience. And it ended up, Charlie Fleischer was out of his mind, and he'd left a prop on the stage, an orange. So I threw the orange at the heckler and was asked to leave the store. Argus Hamilton, Ollie Joe Prater, and Harris Pete dragged the guy out of the room, kicking and screaming, and I'm barking like a chihuahua, and stay out! And I got kicked out of the room for a few months. When I came back, Robert Aguayo was there. We became partners. And between the two of us, because we were doing the same job, rather than answer them one at a time, we just took over Sunday afternoons at the Comedy Store when there was nobody there. And people would come in. There was $1 charge for the workshop. Say, man, I ain't got a whole dollar right now, man. Can you get me in and you know, yeah, come on in. So 18 people in the room, we got $12.38. We'd go to Ben Frank's and have hamburgers. That would be it.
So what did you do in that workshop at that time? What were you giving them?
We just lied. When I meet people who want to do stand-up, I tell them it's painful. I tell them the truth, you know, and it's like, God makes you funny, not me. If you're funny already, we can help you develop an act. We can help you form structure, you know, because there's structure to this. People don't know how specific comedy structure is. I mean, a joke, you know, premise, setup, punchline, callbacks. I mean, there's so many things you have to learn, and most people learn it through experience.
Right.
So what we provided them was a time-saving opportunity to cut to, well, you need to do this. You said that 10 times, blah, 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 blah. But mostly what I did was motivate people, not teach them comedy. Because it's not on the Harvard, it's not on the Yale
Right.
curriculum. So we would just say, honestly, I just gave people permission. You know, and sometimes that's all you need. You need somebody to say, yeah, you could do it.
Well, what just came to me as you were talking about the workshop is back then there were no books for stand-up.
Correct.
There were no other classes.
This was before Judy Carter.
Right. She actually was the first one.
She wrote the absolute best handbook on stand-up.
Yes, but to be able to at that time want to get up and do stand-up.
There was no avenue of learning. You know, there was no University of Comedy, and because I'd been to state-of-the-art actors workshop, I learned from Peggy that when you were doing scene night, it wasn't about you. It was about her. So she had 23 actors out there, and she says, you know, that's too fat, that's too thin, that's too loud, that's not loud enough. I don't know what the hell you're doing. So in the curve of a night, in the arc of a night, there's that word, arc, you'll hear it 1,000 times. What does that mean? It's not Noah's Ark. It's an arc. It's a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the curve of that night, in the arc of that night, if you were listening to the notes she gave other actors, you grew. So the idea of putting 18 strangers together who all had one dream or nightmare of doing stand-up, not so much their work, but the work of their peers. They could learn from everybody else's
Right. And you just
efforts.
hit upon a very important point that sometimes actors lose, it goes over their head, and that is when you are in an acting class, even when you are not on doing your scene, you are getting valuable information. If you're paying attention, it will help you in your process.
Let's go back to that sentence. If you're paying for a workshop, then get every ounce that you can. I don't know anybody who teaches acting in this town for free.
And if they do run.
You know, I could name some legendary names, you know, in the acting world. But I get their students a lot. And there's this relationship some of these really Hall of Fame acting coaches have, and that is, hey dude, if you're in my acting class, then I coach you for my fees. And I used to post the fees up in my workshop.
I remember.
And I'd say, that's what she gets paid, that's what he gets paid, that's what we're doing, one-on-one work. Now, I can give you a card if you like, you know, you can go study with them. And they go, really? I go, yeah, and see that 50 right there, you know what that means? 50 minutes, because when you work with her, there are only 50 minutes in an hour. I don't know where you went to school.
Just like a therapist.
But there's, exactly, there's 60 minutes in
Just
an hour.
like a therapist.
So if you're paying to get acting workshops or a writing workshop, if you're paying a dime, you better be paying attention, because there's a lot more to learn from other people's writing, from other people's stand-up, from other people's films. I mean, across the board, it's a learning experience. It's not just me. It's us, because I'll say it today, I'll say it yesterday, I'll say it tomorrow. It's not about skill or talent in this town. It's about relationship. That's why when I left the Comedy Store, I started my own workshop called the Peer Group Workshop, because it wasn't about me, it wasn't about you, it was about us. And that communion of sharing ideas and learning to take criticism. without being offended or hurt. That's the root of stand-up comedy.
What is the importance of taking criticism?
To change what you're doing that isn't working and find a solution to your problem. One night, Richard Pryor was on stage at the Comedy Store doing an album. That N-word is crazy. And there was that N-word in a lot of stuff he did. But I saw Richard record 3 albums, and that'd be over a 2-week period. Wally Hyder was the recording entity, and they'd put trucks up, and Richard's name was never on the marquee, but the word would get out. Richard's gonna be on stage, and man, some big red hats and some Cadillacs would show up, some little white girls, some Asian people. I mean, they came from all over town to see Richard, stars and wannabes. And one night at the Comedy Store, next to the entrance it used to be a bar. It was a cashier, and there was a bar around it, but there was a space behind that bar, like a dugout, and comics would hide back there and watch for free, watch the show. Some people like Shirley Hemphill and George Miller would sleep there because they had nowhere else to go before they were made it. But one night, Richard was on stage. 9, 10, 11 minutes. Silence. Just silence. And some young comic says, "Oh my God, Richard's bombing." I go, "No, you idiot. He's writing something you don't know how to do. Watch him. Watch him work. Come back Wednesday." We saw him take Mudbone, the character, from 40 minutes to 4.
Mm.
Because trial and error, trial and error, trial and error.
What works, what doesn't.
To see what works, what doesn't work. That's what criticism is for you. Because that silence was the audience criticizing Richard, going, "We don't get it. Not that you're not funny. We don't get it. You have to say something we get." It's not, and now there's a whole generation of comics who talk to the audience and then get feedback from the audience and then have combat with the audience. I don't understand that. I learned it's a communion. It's about us. It's a common experience. Jay Leno, for example, taught us. Did you ever notice, they're trying to fool us. He was inclusive. He never said me, I had this experience, I saw this at the mall. Did you ever see a guy who did this? Did you ever notice how that? He was inclusive. And once you learned that was a tool in your toolbox. And then you went on to the next level, and the next level. Gary Shandling, for example, was a writer when he came to the store. Never did stand-up. Very, very intimidated, very weak. I used to sneak him on stage. "Get him out of here. He's a writer. He's not a comic." I used to sneak Merrill Markle and David Letterman and a blind comic named Alex Valdez. "Tell him to wear glasses." Mitzi, he can't see. "I know, but it bothers me." Okay. So I used to cheat because I had this gatekeeper, relationship with the club. I used to put people on the stage, give them an opportunity you can't buy stage time.
Right.
So criticism is 50% of what you need to get on stage. You need an audience. And if they don't laugh, that's criticism.
So, you leave the store. When did you start working? Was it Laverne and Shirley?
Okay, yeah, I was writing at Laverne and Shirley. Well, first
Gary
of all,
Marshall.
I'm probably the worst writer in the history of Paramount and Gary Marshall.
How did you get that job?
Gary Shandling, who I used to sneak on stage. We used to play tennis, and there were a bunch of kids. Ed Solomon, who's the executive producer of the Bill Cosby Show. John, he's a big barbecue king now. Gary was mentoring them.
Okay.
Ed Solomon did Men in Black, and John did the Cosby Show. I mean, legendary efforts. I remember being at Laverne and Shirley, sitting next to Ed Solomon when his first ever script was being produced, and he was mortified. He was just mortified, and he grabbed my leg. I think I still have scars. I go, "What's wrong, Ed?" He goes, "Nothing's left of my script. That's not what." I go, "Dude, you got the byline. That's going to be there for the rest of your life."
And the byline is written
by Ed Solomon. That script, Lifetime, is worth hundreds of thousands. I mean, a lot of money, because you get residuals and royalties and stuff. Blah 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 blah. Not royalties. That's a different thing. But so Gary, when there was a movement that we went through everything. We went through everything. We went through minority opportunities programs. We went through this and that. And when I was on the air in radio, there was an African American announcer at a brand new station called KISS.
Yes.
So there was, quote, a black man here and a brown man here, caused nothing but trouble. Well, they were introducing women, gay people, Native Americans, Asians, Latinos. And so when all this political turmoil came up, Gary says, I know a guy I work with at the Comedy Store. You know, he happens to be Latino, but he's a funny guy and stuff. So I met with the producers. They hired me. And I went, just like everything else I ever did, had no clue. And I'm with these heavyweight, you know, incredible. Gary Marshall and Neil Simon wrote for I Love Lucy. You know, everybody there was a star, except me. So I'll be honest, not the greatest writer that ever came out of that program, but I was a great student. And the things I learned from Gary Marshall, I've applied to my writer's workshop, because like I tell my writers, I didn't invent this. This is structure, you need to know it. And the structure hasn't changed. They changed, it's like, there's no programming anymore. Now it's content. We need content. No, you need programming. You know, they just changed the vocabulary, but it's the same
few
thing.
Years just to act like.
But once Gary gave me the green light, Mark Sotkin and Chris Thompson, who were the producers at that time, met with me and said, "Are you kidding me? And Gary's a great reference." Blah 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 blah. So Gary helped a lot of people. He and I kind of got in tandem and helped a few other people. That's what really got me going in this business. It was never. It started out to be about me, and I learned the hard way. It's not about you. And once I surrendered to that I was born of service, and that I could help other people realize their goals, that was gratifying. To see somebody start with an empty page, complete a script, get an agent, get a job, whew, that's powerful stuff.
Let's talk about going from not having money to having money. What was that journey like for you?
Wow. Well, once I got in tune with my story and how important that is to the stand-up, to be true and honest to your story, as I suggested when we were talking about Peggy, one of the things I learned from her is the only legitimate thing that I own coming into that workshop world, and that is, I don't want to hear about your real life truth. Your story, your truth means nothing to me. If you're going to be a writer, exaggerate, lie to me, okay? Just because it was a Buick that ran you off the road, there's no reason why it couldn't be, you know, a Hyundai going 150 miles with all these black guys and Rodney King in the backseat. A bus, you know, drove you off the cliff. Your truth, by comparison, everybody has one. Honesty is great. That stimulates. That's a good premise to start. But you got to write. You got to invent. Lie to me, I say. So I always say, never let the truth, your truth, be an anchor. Let it be a springboard. Let that lead you to another story. And not be trapped by, well, this is the way it happened, man. It really happened this way. Well, you know, who cares? When I realized what my story was, what the stage truth was about, I started inventing. I used to say to people, my blessing in life was that I was, my parents were migrant workers. People talk about money as a goal. My blessing was I was born penniless, because I never had a desire for money. There was never any money around me. And my mother managed to feed me, clothe me, teach me without any money. You know, I was born poor. So over the years, some of the people I've worked with have had incredible success. I don't take credit for any success that a client or a student has. You could next week put your little shingle out on Sunset Boulevard, philosopher, dancer, whatever your choice is. You have no control of who's going to walk in that room. That's pretty much God's will, not mine. So you deal with the cards you're dealt. I've been blessed to have some incredibly talented people, hardworking people, passionate people who really want that success that they earn. Some of them remember they got some help along the way, some don't. But the one common denominator is that money thing. One time, a comic, I was coaching at Living Single, and a comic asked me questions about, did money change this person? Did money change that person? We went down a list, and we got to somebody we know and loved and mentioned the name, and I stopped, I go, jury's still out. Because when you go from nothing to making $35,000, $45,000 a week, and you live a lifestyle for 5 years at that level, you begin to think you're worth it. You begin to think, you know, they owe you. And all kinds of things can happen to change all that. If you're not grounded, you know, if you put money before everything, you could achieve that. I got a lot of friends of mine who be rich and famous. They're not happy. And why is it that these people end up, you know, destroying themselves? You know, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, nor have I played one on TV, but there's an inordinate amount of comics who've been found dead.
With a lot of money.
With a lot of money.
Yes.
So what I always say is, I tell everybody, I don't want you to chase money. I want money to chase you.
Amen. Amen. How did you budget your money when you were starting out? And how do you budget it now?
Well, I wasn't very good at budgeting in the beginning. You know, to be honest, there was a lot of partying. Because, I mean, when you're hanging out with guys like Sam Kinison, when you're hanging out, I mean, there was a time when drugs were part of the everyday experience in Hollywood. It's changed a little bit, but I'm not involved with somebody. I mean, I grew older and out of, but people are coming into
the life.
Yeah, and you know, now people pop pills and there's designer drugs. I know I was never. I'm really old school. You know, marijuana, cocaine, things like that. Not those particularly, but things like that, and it was prevalent. Okay, so the first wake-up call for me was going on the road for several weeks and coming home with a couple $100. But I was gone for 5 weeks. I should have more money. What did you do with it? I misused it, you know. And then you start realizing this work is like seasonal work. I grew up in the fields. You went from crop to crop to crop to crop. It was a bad weather. It's a bad harvest. It's bad money. So you learn to put things away. So our business used to be really seasonal. When there was only 3 networks, there was a pilot season, the summer reruns, the fall season. So there were, you know,
Ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm. So you learn when you're on the good foot to take all that money they overpaid you to begin with, and then put it away for those times you weren't working. And then there was something called unemployment insurance, the closest thing to supporting the arts we ever had in this country. And if you knew how to work the numbers right, and it's not charity, they
Right,
take money out of your check.
right.
It's like disability. It's not charity. It's not being on the dole. You just can't walk in and give you. You have to earn that. But because it's a seasonal thing, you could survive with a little help from EDD. But you really have to learn the hard way. You know, you got to get evicted a few times. And in LA, it's about the car. You got to be stuck on the 101 at 3 a.m. with a broken down machine going, there's got to be something better than this. But before that, internet thing happened. Before the cable thing happened, it was just CBS, ABC, NBC. That was it. So we were pretty limited in scope. But watching my peers go through a lot of money and a lot of unhappiness, I learned through experience. And don't get me wrong. When I say money's not the answer, you know, you're worth whatever anybody wants to pay you. If somebody wants to pay you $5 million for a movie, no boo-hoo-hoo. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. All I'm saying is, if you develop enough skills and you work hard enough to make your presence in the marketplace known, that money will find you. And there's nobody in Hollywood I know of working now that don't get paid unless it's new media, internet, Google, Amazon, you know, you got to honor the union at some point because they establish minimums. You're never going to get paid less than this. So I always encourage my people, because you can right now, because of the internet, because of the technology, you can go get experience. You can get film, you can get video, you can get samples of your work, not get rich doing it, but then that will put you in
Your calling card.
Your
that
calling
becomes
card.
Your,
Yeah.
that becomes
It's a
your
union
calling
town.
card. Okay, you were talking earlier, and I want to come back to it, about the writing process, and one of the things that you talked about embellishing, and one of the other things that, having worked with you, writing the one person show, that you told me all the time is, we got to kill this baby, and I remember that process being so painful. Like, but I love this scene. Yeah, we're killing babies today.
It's really simple. It's really simple. Okay, I didn't invent this. I mean, I'll take credit for never let the truth be an anchor, let it be a springboard. I mean, that came out of my experience. But the other thing I noticed, being at the Comedy Store with the greats of all time, I mean the greats, okay? I mean, I never saw Lenny Bruce on stage, but I saw the Rodney Dangerfields, the David Brenners, I saw Jackie Mason. I mean, I saw a plethora of old school, current, new school. I mean, I wealth of comedians. I had a front row seat. And what I used to recognize in them, they all had patterns and rhythms that were unique to themselves. And I kept thinking, is that something you learn? Because if you don't know what a callback is, you will. If you don't know what a running gag is, you will. If you don't know what a pun is, what a word joke is, you know, how to do a callback from your first opening bit to your closing bit, how to get all those story points and put them in the last 8 minutes and watch them jump up and down because they're familiar with the material. That structure. Well, I'm watching these people, and I'm watching how Richard comes up with these things. I'm thinking, I just guessed that your brain does not think in incomplete thoughts. Okay? It doesn't go, Mary had a little lamb, and stop. You do the whole rhyme in your head, but it's in your head. And your job as a writer is to take that vision, that motivation, that feeling, that DNA, whatever it is. So I learned from the writers at the Writers Guild, because I was a founding member in the Latinos Writers Committee at the Guild. We went 18 years without a success. Okay, between Chico and the Man and George Lopez. Nothing! Not because we couldn't write, because the industry didn't recognize us as a marketplace. No, it's everywhere, which is great. I'll die happier. But one of the things you learn is, that I thought was, part of your task as a writer is write it down. Back in the day, comics used to walk around with tape recorders. Steve Allen was the first I ever saw do it. He talked to the tape recorder more than he talked to people. And then he had his secretary, Mary, type it all up, and he had cases and reams and files of any subject. Octopus, porpoise, shoes. I mean, you just go to his shelf, because he would document all these ideas. Most comics are lazy, you know. They think of something in a car with another comic, it's brilliant. They don't know what, an hour later, they don't know, what did I say? So I just intuitively decided that you don't think in incomplete thoughts. Your job is to mind those thoughts. So what I learned at the Writers Guild was what they call the vomit draft. Get it out. Sit there at your laptop, your computer, your hand, whatever, however you want to express yourself. Tape recorder, just get it out. Then go back. But don't stop. They were in a green truck. No, it was a red truck. No, it was 2 minutes. Just get it out, because that idea is going to end up in the cosmos pretty soon.
And be flexible in the rewrite process.
So in order to get to the point where you're killing your babies, you got to give birth to all them babies. You got to go through the whole thing and then put it away and come back to it. The one thing you're really going to be surprised at if you're writing something, if you get it out, put it away, and then come back to it, you're going to go, wow, I wrote this? This is kind of nice. Wait a minute. So I tell writers, sometimes you have to write 3 scenes that you'll never use to get past them. You know?
Get it out of you.
Yeah.
Got to get it out of you.
Yeah, and then that's where you learn how to edit. And that's what Killing Babies is really all about. How to get rid of stuff, how to cut stuff, how to make it tighter, how to give it rhythm, how to give it momentum, thrust is what they used to say at the USC Film School. How do you get from one act to the other? Some kind of thrust that you have in your storyline.
So you have been in the business for a long time.
Long
you have seen every version of Latinos getting ready to hit it, and Latinos, they're going to be the next wave, and the Hispanics, and this and that. What are your pet peeves?
Well, one of the problems I have is I don't understand why the majority culture keeps renaming us. There's no such term as Hispanic. It was a media term. Some say, my understanding was it came from the census during the Nixon administration. You can do your own research, but there's no root derivation of the word. It's not like Hispaniola. And the entertainment business just embraced it. So it started appearing in the breakdowns. Hispanic actors. And then once I saw, please only submit authentic Hispanic, I mean, that's not true. And I said that to a big time producer once, and embarrassed the casting director because I spoke the truth, the power. We're not Hispanics. We're not a group. You come from New York. I got a friend of mine from Miami. I'm from the San Joaquin Valley. I'm Mexican. You're Puerto Rican. He's Cuban. Now, according to the government, we're all Hispanics, but we don't share a language. We don't share food. There's nothing we share.
Beans and rice.
That's it. But
just prepared different.
But God bless those Cubans. They can do it with a fork and a knife. I can't do that. I get a tortilla with my fingers. I wipe it off my chin. Soy Chicano. But then that wasn't good enough for them. Now we've got this Latinx thing.
Yeah, Latinx.
Okay, so
that's the new terminology. Every so many years we have
and there have been several different blockades of these terms that they use to describe us, and some of them are patterned in and set in. I don't use the word Hispanic in my vocabulary at all, because I disrespected the nature of it and the way it's been used. Here's an example. When I was at the Comedy Store, and I eventually got to the writing world, and I eventually got to the acting world, I had to have an agent. And one of my part-time jobs was an answering service. Before cell phones and computers, before voicemail, before phone machines, you had to have an answering service. You paid somebody to answer phones. You gave your number. And I worked at a place called A1 Answering Service. And you were told to use your name when you answered the phone. They'd say, A1, Lydia. And I'd say, no. A1, Danny. So I became A1 Danny. And people remembered that. And I'm looking at clients who are, I'm giving it, your agent says you got to be at Universal Studios tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for a reading with 9:30 a.m. I ain't going to Universal. Man, dude, I live at the beach. I'm just telling you what came in. And after dozens of these actors complaining about what time their audition was, one particular agency that was doing pretty well, I started monitoring the calls. And I had this agent's home number, his girlfriend's number, his boyfriend's number, the steam bath, the restaurant, the bar. I had all his numbers. And one day I called him. I said, listen, this is A1 Danny. And I'm warning you right now. If your whiny clients don't want to go all the way to Universal Studios on 9:30 on a Monday morning, I will. Who is this? This is A1 Danny. So I caused trouble with this guy. As a matter of fact, there was a club on Santa Monica, not far from the Troubadour, where we used to do band breaks as because we couldn't get stage time at the Comedy Store. We'd do band breaks at the Troubadour between world-class musicians. And I actually went to this, because I had access to everything. I had free tickets to everything. So I actually went to this club, a very exclusive club, and I called him on the house phone And he went to the payphone. That's how old the story is. He went to the payphone. I just wanted to look at him to see who he was, right? And he had a gold chain around his neck, and he had, you know, Italian loafers. I said, yeah, he looks like an agent. So turns out that Arnold Soloway was his name. And working with him was a woman named Dolores Robinson, Holly Robinson's mom, great agent, great manager. She represented some of my friends in class. John Henton was one of them. I mean, just an amazing experience. And I went to the office to meet her, and she goes, Arnold's not going to represent you. You know, I mean, it's not that easy. You know, he's a little upset. You know, you call him, and I have his numbers. You know, I understand. And she was so intrigued in me. She goes, I'll tell you what. We're going to put you in pocket. I had no idea what that meant. That meant we're going to send you out.
We're not signing you.
We're not signing you. There's no guarantee. First thing I went for was a pilot called Comedy in America. Scoey Mitchell, great old school comic, was producing it. I went to read for it. And after the reading, he said, you know, you're pretty good, but, you know, this guy's a Latino character. He's Mexican. And quite frankly, I don't think you're dark enough. I said, excuse me? Scoey Mitchell? Are you, dude, look in the mirror, you know? And we had this confrontation, and he hired me. And that was the first thing I ever did. I go back to the agency, and Dolores is going, my. You know he's gonna sign you. I go, yeah, well, he wants the commission. He goes, well, that's part of it. He goes, but, dude, the way you got here, the way you booked your first thing, and it was a pilot, you know, he's very interested in you. So when I finally met Arnold in his office, I had a Robert Blake thing. So I was dressed just like Robert Blake. Mm-hmm. And I put my feet up on his desk. And I said to him, dude, get over yourself. I got your name out of a hat. But Arnold Soloway became another one of those mentors. He taught me the business inside and out. And to this day, you know, I owe him a great deal. Gary Marshall, I owe a great deal to. Again, not the greatest writer he's ever produced, but a great student. And I've passed on what I learned from him to people who need to learn it. Dolores Robinson, another person who helped mentor me. I mean, I've had mentors all along the way. Didn't know it till after the fact. And now as I look back, the best thing I ever learned from them was to pay it forward. So rather than be a teacher, because I can't teach anybody to be funny, you know, you got your own story to tell. I certainly can mentor you, I can motivate you. That I enjoy doing.
So what are you doing now?
Right now, I'm resting. I just finished 4 episodes of a new TV series called Briar Patch. It's on the USA Network. Rosario Dawson is #1 on the call sheet, and she's an amazing, absolutely amazing woman.
So who do you play?
I play Ignacio. I play sort of a father figure to her. She and her sister grew up in a small Texas town. She ends up in Washington, D.C. as an investigator for the Senate. Someone murders her sister. She goes home. She's not happy with what she learns, so she decides to stay there and solve the case herself. It's kind of like a Twin Peaks. Some strange characters going on, strange things happening there. She comes to me because I'm the safest guy there. And I watched her and her sister grow up, and she's like, what's up? Same old crap, you know. A scene we did together for the pilot. As you know, as an actor, you know there's sometimes, you know, you're just not getting it.
Right.
You know, another take. And the director was trying to get her to do something, and they were not connecting at the moment. And I'm going, oh, don't let me. I ain't saying nothing, man. No, don't, no. And at one point in time, we just lock eyes, and it's kind of like, let's do this. I was like, okay. And we finally get a take that's just solid. And she's looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and then we're waiting, and then we hear, and cut, print. And we're both going, yeah. And she jumps up and chest bumps me. Now, at that time, I was just out of the hospital. I spent 76 days in the hospital, as you know, because you were the only one there for me. So,
love my Danny Mo.
That was 2 years ago when I got to the hospital. in this last week, both my infectious disease doctor and my primary care physician gave me a green light. In 2 weeks, I'm gonna be causing trouble again. At the last time we shot this piece, the fourth episode, I literally had one scene, not even a scene, one frame, a shot, 162 frames, whatever it was just me looking up, listening to the rain on the roof. Cut! And I turned to the creator of the show, executive producer and writer of the episode. I said, "What's up with the rain?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Come on, man, that's a pathetic fallacy. Someone's gonna die." "Who's gonna die?" He goes, "A lot of people are gonna die, but you're safe." So if there's a second year, I'll be back. They'll kill me then. But Briar Patch, USA Network, will probably be released in January. But I'm back on set coaching again. One of my original clients, a kid named Mario Lopez. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a brand now.
I think he dances or
yeah,
does a bell thing, was saved by a bell.
He was saved by a bell. I had nothing to do with that. I met him when he was 10 doing AKA Pablo with Norman Lear. He was 10. And I met his family. We fell in love. And later on, when he finished Saved by the Bell, I thought I found myself a movie star. If I could just get him to work hard and study, we'd have Cruise with a Z in it, We still don't have that box office guy. We've got a lot of great actors. There were bigger box office guys in the 40s and 50s than we are now. But my number one client for a long time was Jay Hernandez, and now he's number one in the call sheet at Magnum PI. And Mario's back on the scene. He was supposed to do something for Netflix, but he had so many conflicting contractual commitments that he stayed on as a co-executive producer because he helped create the show. And he has a little kind of recurring role. So I'm on set coaching him. One of my writers, Jessica Lopez, graduate from my workshop for many, many years, she and my good friend Rick Ramirez, who used to be the senior vice president of marketing and distribution for Target, Warner Brothers.
Yes.
He and I double teamed for years and years and years. A lot of people you've never heard of, but he could open doors. I could sit people down, slap them around, and together we helped a lot of people get in position to show business. So there's been a lot of yanking and pulling at me. George Lopez was in my workshop at the Comedy Store when he was 17. Con miedo, he didn't want to get up. His best friend Ernie was driving him to the thing. I have no influence on George Lopez's success. I was just one of the first Latino comics he ever saw. And one day, a few years ago, I was doing a workshop at Elephant Stages. And Pablo, he burst in the door with Lionel Sanders, a comic he was in a row with at the time. This is many years ago. And I look up, there's George Lopez in my workshop. And he takes stage and starts telling everybody in the room what a great guy I am, and listen to me. It worked for him. And I'm going, how much do I owe you? He said the same thing once to an audience. I did a guest on his show, and he just embarrassed the hell out of me. We both were crying, kind of, me more than him. Actually, I'm lying. He wasn't crying at all. I think he was counting money. But at the end of the show, I give him a big hug, and the audience is screaming and yelling because he tells about the time he met me and what I was wearing and da-da-da-da. And as I'm hugging, I said to George, save this for the funeral. There aren't enough people here. But Jay Hernandez is one of my, prides because he's now really doing well. And will probably be the first Latino that I see in my life with a Z in his last name that's going to command box office. But I'm working with Mario Lopez again on a show called The Expanding Universe of Ashley Garcia. Mm-hmm. But as a result of getting a green light from all my doctors and stuff, having been out of the game for about 2 years, I managed to do a little bit of work. I had a guest star on Madam Secretary. I did work. All actors got to work. But I'm at that place in my life now where I was before. I'm hungry. Mm-hmm. I'm motivated.
I love that.
And people are knocking at my door going, I want to be a comic. And I try to talk them out of it. I want to be an actor. I try to talk them out of it. I want to be a director. I charge them. Because they're the only ones that have money. Because there are probably already actors and writers. But I'm getting excited again.
So what would you like to do in the next couple of years? What do you see?
I have no choice. I'm going to end up doing a stand-up workshop somewhere.
Okay.
I wish it was like at the Comedy Store on Sundays like it used to be for $1, but I can't even buy a newspaper for $1. And I live in Manhattan Beach, with a lot of white people. But they raise the property values. It's worth it. So I'm looking for an opportunity to do an actor's workshop, a writer's workshop, and a comedy workshop. And what I'm probably going to do is put them all together for a short time, so they can understand the discipline of the others.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing I learned of being in a writer's room or on a writing staff is the writers are over here and the actors are over there, and there's a lot of crosstalk about, oh, he can't act, they're not funny, they can't write, because they don't understand the discipline of the other's work.
Right.
So I'm trying to put together another peer group workshop, and hopefully I'll figure that out in the next 90 days, and pretty soon I'll be up and running.
I have a quick question
Sure.
for you. Who is the greatest director that you have ever worked with,
Wow. Wow.
and why?
Whew. Well, I can only say most recently, Nikki Caro. She's from New Zealand. I mean, if you've been in the film business as long as we have, you know, you recognize, you know, the William Wylers, the Coppolas. I mean, you recognize all those great directors. I work with Barry Levinson. He's a great director. I worked at a film called McFarlane USA. Kevin Costner can do it all. He's a great actor, he's a great director, he's a producer. He does it all. And he's very hands-on. Why I'm going to single out Nikki is she did something no one has ever done in my entire career. I did a guest star role on Grimm, an NBC show, in which my scene partner was Chicano. The writer was a Latina, and the producer was a Latino. In 45 years, I've never been on a set for an entire week without, forgive me, a white guy. Me and this kid, me and the script and this kid, me and the script, this kid, and the producer, all Latinos. Never happened before in my life, unless it's a telenovela or something. You know, so that was like a highlight of my career in terms of raza. Well, she fought for us. It's a Disney film, and you know, they offered her Kevin Costner. Well, I'll take Kevin in a minute. He's a great actor. I love Kevin. But she fought for all the Latinos you see on that screen. She demanded, and because she's from New Zealand, she said something like, I want indigenous people. I want Mexican people. I don't want people portraying Mexican. And the people at the studios, what difference does it make? And she said, it matters. So everybody you see on that screen, she fought for. The kids you see in McFarlane, some of them never acted before. Some of them are actually from McFarlane. She put that on her back. That script had to be 20 pages, 25 pages too long. Trust me, I've seen 1,000 scripts. It was too long. She edited it. She shot it. Her DP, her musical director, her team. She did Whale Watchers, Whale Rider,
Mm-hmm.
the zookeeper's wife. She's absorbed in the film, but she takes responsibility for what she does. And I've never seen a director fight for us, unless they were raza, the way she did, and insisted that's the way it was going to go. So she's rated really high on my list.
Thank you so much for joining us, Danny. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Common Sense Mamita. Hit the bell so you can get the notifications as they come. And let us know what you think about this interview. Your feedback really matters to me. I want to know. And we're going to put below how you can reach Danny Mora to coach you or put him in one of your projects, because he is fabulous.